Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I express doubt or uncertainty? In English, we usually use modal verbs to express doubt or uncertainty, like might or would. French, however, doesn't have modal verbs. You have to use completely different constructions. Let's start with might, as in I might go to the party. The easiest way to do this is to simply add the adverb peut-être, meaning maybe. So you would get je vais peut-être à la fête. Another way to say might or may is to use il se peut que plus the subjunctive. For example, il se peut que la voiture soit en panne, meaning it is possible that the car is broken down, or the car might be broken down. But be careful. If you want to say something might have happened in the past, you have to use past subjunctive. So, for example, il se peut que je l'ai lu. This means I might have read it, or it's possible that I've read it. Let's move on to could and take the sentence I could eat a whale. In this case, you're speaking about something you could do in the future. So you use the conditional of the verb can, which is pouvoir, and you get je pourrais manger une baleine. But let's say you want to talk about something you could have done in the past. In this case, you would use pouvoir in the past perfect. For example, j'aurais pu manger une baleine, meaning I could have eaten a whale. Now, let's look at would. You probably already know this form in the present tense. For example, je voudrais le croque-monsieur. I would like the croque-monsieur. This is the conditional present. You may also remember it from a previous lesson about if statements. For example, on partirait si vous étiez prêt, meaning we would leave if you were ready. This is case 2, an unlikely situation that could come true if something else happened first. If you want to say that you would have in the past, then just conjugate the verb in the conditional perfect. For example, j'aurais voulu un croque-monsieur, meaning I would have liked a croque-monsieur. Finally, let's talk about should. Should is conjugated as the conditional of the verb devoir, meaning to have to or must. Then you add the infinitive of the verb that you should have done. For example, je devrais manger, meaning I should eat, or on devrait partir, meaning we should leave. This is a very helpful construction. So make sure to memorize the conditional present tense of devoir. If you want to talk about something you should have done, conjugate devoir in the conditional perfect. I should have eaten would be j'aurais dû manger. We should have left would be on aurait dû partir. You should have memorized it would be vous auriez dû le mémoriser. And that's it. I hope that helped. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are Bondicinis? Bondicinis are comics and they are an important part of French culture. France has the third largest comic book market in the world, after US and Japan. In fact, BDs are often called le neuvième art, or the ninth art. Unlike typical comics, which are usually funny or just for kids, French BDs can be about almost any subject and for any age. Bondicinis are also a great way to improve your French, since many are targeted to children. You may already know some. It should be noted that a lot of these BDs were made by Belgian authors. Les BD franco-belges are comics that are made for French and Belgian audiences. Because they share the same language, they often share comics as well. Here are some popular series you might want to check out. Les Aventures de Tintin, or The Adventures of Tintin, is a famous comic about a young detective, his dog, and his strange friends. Asterix is a funny series about Gauls resisting the Romans. There's also the Smurfs, or as they're known in France, les Schtroumpfs, were created in Belgium. A more recent comic is Le bleu est une couleur chaude. It was recently made into the film. Blue is the warmest color. Persepolis is another recent Bondicinis about a girl growing up during the Iranian Revolution. So if you want to improve your French, try reading Bondicinis. It will help you with French grammar, vocab, and culture while reading interesting stories. That's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the different uses of she? This is a good example of a word that has multiple meanings. You've probably already learned that she plus a personal pronoun means home. For example, je rentre chez moi means I'm going back home. But it can also mean at an office. For example, j'ai trouvé un emploi chez Disney means I found a job at Disney. And j'ai un rendez-vous chez le médecin means I have a meeting at the doctor's office. Finally, she can be translated as among or pertaining to. For example, chez les Français, c'est normal de manger du cheval means among French people, it's normal to eat horse meat. And chez les Américains, les socialistes sont assez rares means among Americans, socialists are rather rare. And chez lui, c'est bizarre means that's strange for him. So to recap, she can be a preposition to refer to someone's house or office. But it can also be a more figurative preposition, meaning for them, amongst these people, etc. It has a fairly broad meaning and can be used in lots of situations. For example, if you want to talk about American culture or politics, you can use the same phrase chez les Américains. As long as the subject is understood, she works just fine. Try to incorporate it into your spoken French. You will sound much more fluent, even when you don't know a word. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, why are French words spelled so differently from how they are pronounced? French spelling and pronunciation may be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for French learners. And there are lots of reasons why French words look so different from how they are pronounced. The main reason is history. The French language is often called a mix between Latin, from the Romans, and Gaulish, the ancient language of Gaul, or modern-day France and Belgium. Latin was used as the writing system, but over time, as more people became literate, French also became a written language. The only problem was that there was no standardized way of spelling. Guérir, to heal, was sometimes spelled with an A. Fromage was sometimes spelled like this. François was famously spelled with a Y. And remember that many of the people who could read and write also knew Latin. So when l'Académie Française was tasked with standardizing French, there was a big debate. Should French be spelled the way it sounds, or should it show its Latin roots? For this reason, it might feel like you are only pronouncing half a word. This is to show its Latin origins, which were once pronounced. Or just as important, the pronunciation might have changed while the spelling stayed the same. For example, the en ending of third-person plural verbs used to be pronounced. Now it's silent and just sounds like the third-person singular. It also led to some interesting spelling innovations. For example, the circumflex. This accent means that an S used to follow the letter. Fête used to be fest or feast. Bête used to be best or beast. So the short answer is that oral language changes while spelling often stays the same. However, in 2016, the Academy made spelling reforms. If you pay attention, you can see language changing all the time. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, why do some verbs sometimes use être and sometimes use avoir to make passé composé? As you might remember, some verbs in passé composé are conjugated with être instead of avoir. These verbs are our Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump verbs. Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump is a mnemonic device for remembering the verbs conjugated with être. They are verbs associated with movement and change. But sometimes you will see a Van der Trump verb conjugated with avoir instead. Why? It all has to do with meaning. If you are talking about the subject moving or changing, use être. You use avoir as your auxiliary verb when there is an object involved. Let's take a look and see how the meaning changes with some examples. Je suis sortie le soir means I went out for the night. J'ai sorti les valises means I took out the suitcases. Because the action is happening to the suitcases, you use avoir. Je suis montée means I went up, while j'ai monté les valises means I brought up the suitcases. And je suis descendue du train means I got off the train. J'ai descendu les valises means I brought down the suitcases. Je suis rentrée means I came back home, while j'ai rentré les chiens means I brought in the dogs. Je suis retournée à la ville means I came back to the city, while j'ai retourné la table means I turned the table over. Here's a tricky one. Je suis montée dans l'ascenseur. J'ai monté l'escalier. The first means I went upstairs in the elevator, and the second means I took the stairs up. So be careful. Passer is a special verb because the meanings are very different. Je suis passée par la librairie means I passed by the bookstore, or I went by the bookstore. J'ai passé l'été à Dakar means I spent the summer in Dakar. If you want to describe movement, use être to conjugate passé. If you want to talk about figurative passing, like passing time, use avoir. For example, elle est passée par la porte means she went out through the door. And elle a passé le week-end avec son copain means she spent the weekend with her boyfriend. Finally, il m'a passé le sel means he passed me the salt. So remember that if you conjugate with avoir, the action is happening to a direct object. If you use être, the action is happening to you. That's it. I hope that answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some indispensable phrases and grammar structures for French learners? In this lesson, we're going to go over some phrases that will help you organize your thoughts. We're going to try to use phrases that don't need to be conjugated so that you can use them even with unfamiliar verbs. First is ce que ou ce qui, c'est. This is a great construction to really hammer home your point. You're putting the result first and then the reason. For example, ce qui m'a stupéfié, c'est le manque de respect, which means what really shocked me was the lack of respect. Another form of this is le fait que, ça. This means the fact that, it's. An example is le fait qu'il savait, ça m'a choqué, meaning the fact that he knew, that shocked me. You already know the word pour to mean for, but it can also mean in order to. Just add an infinitive after pour for an easy way to say in order to. For example, on est allé au marché pour acheter du pain, meaning we went to the market in order to buy bread. Here are some ways to show causation. Grâce à, en raison de, and à cause de. Grâce à means thanks to. An example is grâce au podcast, je peux parler français. Meaning, thanks to podcasts, I can speak French. Grâce à shows appreciation. En raison de means because of. It's neutral compared to grâce à. An example is en raison des circonstances, je reste ici. Meaning, because of the circumstances, I'm staying here. À cause de has a negative connotation. À cause de lui, j'ai dû redoubler mes examens. Means, because of him, I had to redo my exams. En fait is often used at the beginning of sentences. It means in fact or actually. Notice that you pronounce the T. Bref is another common sentence starter. It means in short or long story short. Quand même means anyways though. You'll hear it all the time at the end of sentences and the beginning. An example is mais je suis allé avec lui quand même. Meaning, but I went with him anyways. Or oui, mais quand même. Meaning, yes, but still. The next phrase should only be used in conversation, but it can be very useful. It's tu vois ce que je veux dire? Meaning, do you get what I mean? French people use this all the time to make sure that another person is following what they are saying. For French learners, it's a great way to make sure what you've said actually makes sense. And that's it. Try using these phrases. They will help you sound more fluent and they will also help organize your thoughts. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some good recommendations for studying French through movies and music? You could write a book to answer this question, but we'll try to be short. France has been at the heart of movie culture since the beginning of cinema. Nouvelle Vague, or New Wave, was an art movement in the 50s and 60s. François Truffaut was one of its most important metteurs en scène, or directors. The 400 Blows, or Les 400 Coups, and Stolen Kisses, or Baiser volé, are some of the films he made about one character, Antoine Douanel, from childhood to adulthood. And they used the same actor from when he was a boy until he was an adult. The Battle of Algiers or La Bataille d'Alger is actually an Italian film, but it's about France's loss of their colony Algeria. It's a very intense film and stars some people who were actually involved in the Algerian War. If you want to learn more about the north of France, check out Welcome to the Sticks or Bienvenue chez les Ch'tis. This is a more recent comedy and plays heavily on northern stereotypes, so take it with a grain of salt. Hate, or la haine, is another very intense film. It takes place in the suburbs or banlieue of Paris. Another good film that takes place in les banlieues is Girlhood or Bande de filles. It follows a teenage girl growing up in the suburbs. You might want to relax a bit after watching these intense films. For that, I would recommend Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain, which is also known as Amélie. This is a very popular movie from France and is known for its romantic portrayal of Paris. Another fun film is Children of Paradise, or Les Enfants du Paradis, an old movie about a very talented mime. For music, we'll go over some of the major French stars. Serge Gainsbourg is like the Bob Dylan of France, but with a greater love for controversy. In his songs, he covers everything: the 60s, his love affairs with the most beautiful woman in France, reggae, his daughter. He also sings about World War II, which, as a young Jewish boy, he spent hiding in an orphanage. You might already know Edith Piaf's music from the film Inception. A film was also made about her life called La Môme, better known as La Vie en Rose. If you like more modern music, I recommend NTM, a famous rap group. Java is another rap group, though it is not as hardcore as NTM. Dionysos is an indie band that often collaborates with the French singer Olivia Ruiz. And Noir Désir is a good start if you're interested in French rock. But whatever you like, music is a great way to connect with other people. So look around and listen to lots of music. You'll be studying French without even realizing it. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, when I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use the pronoun on? On is a very useful personal pronoun. It is conjugated exactly the same as il ou elle, meaning he or she, and it means either one or we. On is a special pronoun because sometimes it refers to no one in particular. In English, we might translate it as the general one. For example, à Paris, on peut voir les anciennes maisons d'écrivains célèbres. Means, in Paris, one can see the former homes of famous writers. Because on is used in an indeterminate way, it's very important in making the passive voice. For example, on m'a dit de partir, meaning I was told to leave. Or, on a trouvé un portefeuille, meaning a wallet was found. But more commonly, on is used to mean we. It's actually less formal than using nous. And it connotes that on is a group or une bande in French, so it's more friendly and familiar. Because it's conjugated like il ou elle, it's also easier to conjugate than nous. For example, on est allé au cinéma et on a vu la nouvelle comédie. Means, we went to the movies and saw the new comedy. On is used all the time by native speakers and it's easier to conjugate. So, if you use on, you'll sound more fluent and have less to conjugate. And that's it! If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, but I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the difference between amener, emmener, and ramener? These words seem very similar, but you have to memorize the differences. Otherwise, you might confuse whoever you're speaking to. So let's go through them. The base verb mener means to lead. It's a more general term. For example, Napoléon mène ses armées à la capitale. Means, Napoléon leads his army to the capital. And j'espère mener une bonne vie. Means, I hope to lead a good life. Amener means to lead to, or to take someone to some place. You bring someone to some place and leave them there. Emmener means to go with, to bring someone along. You go someplace with another person and stay with them. Ramener means to lead back, to take someone back. You take someone back to the original place. These prefixes are also used for the base verb porter, meaning to carry or to bring. Remember that porter can only be used with inanimate objects. If you are talking about a person, cat, or even an alien, you have to use mener. Apporter means to take to bring to. You're bringing something someplace and leaving it there. Emporter means to bring with. You're bringing something someplace and staying with it. Rapporter means to bring back. You're taking something back to the place it belongs or its place of origin. So remember the prefixes. A, take and leave. En, bring with. And r, bring back. One more time. A, take and leave. En, bring with. And r, bring back. If you remember the prefixes, you should know the meanings. That's it for this lesson. I hope that clears things up for you. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.
Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how does the French school system work and what is the baccalauréat? Le baccalauréat is an exam that students can take at the end of their secondary education. Taking the exam will give you a diploma that shows your skill level of certain subjects. Le baccalauréat, or le bac, is also required in order to go into a university. There are three different types of baccalauréat: le baccalauréat général, le baccalauréat technologique, and le baccalauréat professionnel. Le baccalauréat général is further split up into series, kind of like majors. You can pursue le baccalauréat économique et social, ES, le baccalauréat littéraire, L, or le baccalauréat scientifique, S. This prepares students to enter universities. Le baccalauréat technologique has 8 series and prepares students for working in laboratories, management, or applied arts. Many students go on to study these subjects at university. Le baccalauréat professionnel prepares students to begin working immediately. You can specialize in over 80 different subjects, like industrial maintenance or electric systems. Le bac is scored out of 20, like all French exams. A 10 is a passing grade. A 12 or 13 is assez bien, or satisfactory. 14 or 15 is bien, or good. And 16 or above is très bien, very well done. Le baccalauréat takes a long time to complete. If you take le baccalauréat général série scientifique, you will have to sit for 12 exams total. And some of the exams are 4 hours long. Because of this, students spend their last 2 years preparing for le bac. The school system up until university is quite different from the US system. We'll go through them in chronological order. École maternelle is preschool and starts at age 2 to 5. CP is first grade and the first year of école élémentaire. CE1, CE2, CM1, CM2. Sixième is similar to 6th grade. In France, it is the first year of collège or middle school. Cinquième, quatrième, troisième. Seconde is the first year of lycée or high school. Première is when students would begin studying for le bac. This is the year they would take les épreuves anticipées, exams that everyone takes. Terminale is the last year of lycée. Students spend this year studying for the specific type of bac they want to take. If you are a high school student who is dreaming about attending a French university, you're in luck. You don't have to take the bac to apply. You just have to take a French language exam. And that's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how can I sound cool in French? This lesson will go through the phrases that are more casual, a little younger, and much more slang. They're not proper French, so be careful. To be casual, the most basic thing to do is drop the ne in negative constructions. Je sais pas. I don't know. J'en ai plus. I don't have any more. J'ai dormi que 3 heures. I only slept for 3 hours. Now, if you want to get even more casual, don't fully pronounce je sais pas, becomes je sais pas. It's best translated as I don't know. And we can do it with any verb. For example, je crois, meaning I think so. You'll also hear this contraction with tu. For example, t'es sorti ce week-end means did you go out this weekend? Tu es becomes t'es. Use this with people you know well and only in spoken language. If you use it in writing, it will be une grande faute, a big mistake. Next is c'est n'importe quoi. This is just one of the ways to say something is crazy in French. N'importe quoi means whatever in French, but in this sentence it's closer to anything goes. Other ways to say crazy are c'est dingue, c'est ouf. This is slang for fou, meaning crazy. Maybe you want to emphasize how crazy something is. One option is to add quoi at the end of your sentence. This can come after any sentence and it emphasizes your point. For example, c'est ridicule quoi means this is so ridiculous. Next is un truc de fou. Le truc means the thing, the stuff. It replaces la chose. Un truc de fou is the stuff of crazy people. Le truc, c'est que means the thing is. C'est où le truc? Where is the thing? Now we're going to go over some slang words. Bosser means to work. Bouffer means to eat or to chow down. Picoler means to drink or to knock back. Se casser means to leave or to split. Un boulot is a job. Un pote is a friend. Grosse means big, huge. And c'est marrant means that's funny. And if you really want to sound slangy, replace très with trop. An example is c'est trop marrant, meaning it's too funny. And c'est trop bon means it tastes too good. Here's a sample conversation of slangy French. See if you can understand it. T'es sorti hier soir? Moi j'ai bossé, puis bouffé et picolé un peu avec mes potes. Le truc, c'est que c'était une grosse soirée. J'ai dormi que 3 heures cette nuit. Je suis mort de fatigue. It means, did you go out yesterday? I worked, then ate and drank a little with my pals. The thing is that it was a big night and I slept only for 3 hours. Now I'm dead tired. And that's it. Remember to speak casually only to people you know well. Okay, do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the gerundif and when should I use it? The gerundif is like the ing form of a verb. It's very useful for adding additional information about a subject or verb. To make le gerundif, you first need the past participle, new stem, but with en. You can use le gerundif to describe how or why something happens. For example, en me brossant les dents 2 fois par jour, j'évite d'avoir des caries. Means, by brushing my teeth twice a day, I prevent cavities. And j'ai amélioré mon français en pratiquant tous les jours. Means, I improved my French by practicing every day. Finally, il se détend en faisant du sport. Means, he relaxes by doing sports. You can also use le gerundif to describe two simultaneous actions. For example, j'ai dîné en lisant un roman. Means, I ate dinner while reading a novel. Notice that lisant is preceded by en. This is how you know that the action is simultaneous. For example, j'ai vu un ancien ami en sortant du cinéma. Means, I saw a former friend while leaving the movie theater. Let's look at the difference when we omit en. J'ai vu un ancien ami sortant du cinéma. Means, I saw a former friend leaving the movie theater. Here, it's implied that it was the former friend leaving the movie theater, not you. The second example is technically not le gerundif, because it modifies the noun, l'ancien ami, and not the verb, but it can still be useful. Just like in English, make sure the present participle matches the subject. Take for example, sachant les risques, une commission sera formée, meaning, knowing the dangers, a committee will be formed. This is incorrect, because the committee can't know the dangers when it hasn't even been made yet. Instead, you'd say, sachant les risques, le président a formé une commission, meaning, knowing the dangers, the president formed a committee. This is much better. Also, there are only 3 irregular present participles. 2 of them you heard in this lesson, avoir, ayant, and savoir, sachant. The last one is être, étant. Okay, I hope that answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how can you tell if a noun is masculine or feminine? In French, every noun has a gender. That goes for plural nouns too, like apples and oranges. Other Romance languages have masculine and feminine nouns too. It's a trait that comes from Latin, and the gender depends on the origin of the older Latin word. English doesn't have masculine or feminine nouns, so the easiest way to tell the gender of a French noun is by looking at the last letter of the noun. The general rule is that if a noun ends with an I, it's feminine. For example, la lettre, meaning the letter, la veste, meaning the jacket, and la fraise, meaning the strawberry. Nouns that end with any other letter are generally masculine, like le croissant, the croissant, le mec, which means the guy, or le bijou, meaning the jewel. The only thing is, there are lots of exceptions. For example, le fromage, meaning cheese, is masculine, even though it ends with an I. Another example is voix, meaning voice. This word is feminine, even though it doesn't end with an I, so it's la voix. Because there are so many exceptions to the general pattern, it's best to learn nouns and their articles together. That's le or un for masculine nouns and la or une for feminine nouns. Le and la are like the article de in English. un or une are similar to a. Although a for feminine nouns and any other letters for masculine nouns are the most common ways to determine the gender of a noun in French, a few other letter patterns sometimes apply. Some masculine endings are age, like le fromage or cheese, ment, like le document or document, o, like un oiseau or bird, and voir, like le miroir or the mirror. If you see these letter patterns when you're studying French, it's safe to assume those nouns are masculine. Some feminine patterns are sion or chen, like la nation, meaning the nation, T, like la liberté or liberty, and euse, like la chanteuse or the singer. Just like with the masculine letter patterns I just mentioned, you can assume that words ending with these letter patterns are feminine. It's important to remember what gender a noun is because sometimes it influences other parts of the sentence in French. For example, adjectives change their spelling according to the gender of the noun they modify. It looks a bit like this. The blue notebook, which is masculine, is le cahier bleu. The blue chair, which is feminine, is la chaise bleue, with an extra E. And that's it. I hope that answers your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are false friends and what are the most common ones? There are lots of words that look similar in English and French, but they don't always mean the same thing. It's pretty fitting that they're called false friends because they can be deceptive. Here are some of the most common ones so you can avoid any miscommunication the next time you speak French. Attendre in French means to wait. For example, if you're waiting for your friend, you would say j'attends mon ami. To attend is assister. For example, I'm going to attend a show. Would be je vais assister à un spectacle. Make sure not to confuse assister with the verb to assist. That verb is secourir, meaning to help someone. Another commonly confused verb is passer. Passer doesn't mean to pass by, which would be croiser, to cross. Passer means to sit through something or to spend time. For example, passer un examen means to sit through an exam, not to pass an exam. Another common phrase is comment vas-tu passer tes vacances? Meaning, how are you going to spend your vacation? If you respond, j'ai envie de passer mes vacances en Italie, it has nothing to do with being envious of Italy. Avoir envie de means to want something or to feel like doing something. So this sentence means I want to spend my vacation in Italy. There are also plenty of nouns that are false friends too. Ville, for example, is not villa, it's city. Also, be careful with the word une librairie, which means a bookstore. Don't expect to borrow things for free. Another example is if someone stops you on the street and asks you for de la monnaie. They're asking for spare change. But if you ask for change en monnaie, it means you want your change in coins rather than bills. In more serious situations, if you fall and get hurt, don't say that you're injured, because people will become very concerned about your emotional state. Instead say, je suis blessé, which means I'm hurt, in the physical sense. It had nothing to do with church blessings. Okay, I hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are reflexive pronouns and when do you use them? Before we get into pronouns, let's cover the basics. Every sentence has a subject and an object. For example, in the sentence J'ai acheté un parapluie, which means I bought an umbrella, je, which is I, is the subject, and un parapluie, which is an umbrella, is the object. With some sentences, the subject and the object are the same. This is when you use reflexive pronouns. Some common examples are se laver, meaning to wash oneself, s'adresser à, to address oneself to, se coucher, to put oneself to bed, and s'habiller, to dress oneself. When we say reflexive verbs in French, we mean verbs that use reflexive pronouns, like the verbs se brosser, s'adresser, s'habiller, s'énerver, se fâcher, and s'imaginer. They all have the pronoun se or s apostrophe before the verb, and they generally mean that the subject of the verb is asking on itself. The reflexive pronouns are me with je for myself, te with tu for yourself, se or s apostrophe if the word starts with a vowel, with il and elle for himself and herself, il, elle for themselves, and nous and vous for ourselves. They go in before the verb and after the subject. For example, if you are going to go to sleep, you would say je vais me coucher. If you and your family get up early in the morning, you'd say nous nous levons tôt le matin. Because these verbs use the reflexive pronoun, their objects usually lack the possessive adjectives that appear in English. For example, il se lave les mains means he washes his hands, though if you translated it word for word, it would sound like he washes the hands. This also goes for other phrases like il se lave les cheveux, he washes his hair, and il se brosse les dents for he brushes his teeth. A common reflexive pronoun phrase we use in French is s'en aller, which means to be on one's way. If your friend is getting ready to go, you might ask, tu t'en vas? Which means, you're leaving? Or, are you on your way out? You can also use reflexive pronouns with emotions to make them stronger. For example, if you made your mother angry, you would say, elle s'est fâchée, as in, she became angry. Using the reflexive pronoun is stronger than elle était fâchée, as in she was angry, which just sounds like factual information. Note that with reflexive pronouns, you conjugate the verb according to the subject. That's why fâché has an extra E in this case. If it were your father or your uncle who were angry, you would write il s'est fâché. So that's it. I hope that answers the question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when do you use the direct object pronouns le, la, and les versus the indirect object pronouns lui and leur? Sometimes you want to shorten a sentence with a pronoun rather than use the same noun again. This is similar to how we use it in English. In place of nouns we have already said, such as, did you see that movie yesterday? Yes, I saw it. In French, pronouns come right before a verb to simplify a sentence. For example, If your friend asks you, tu aimes ce roman? Do you like this novel? Instead of, oui, j'aime ce roman. Yes, I like this novel. You might say, oui, je l'aime. Yes, I like it. In this case, you put the pronoun after the subject, je, and before the verb, aimer. But how do you know which pronoun to use? Le, la, and les are used with nouns that are directly attached to the verb. That means you don't need the preposition a. For example, aimer, meaning to like, is one of those verbs. For aimer, we use the L apostrophe in the singular, because aimer begins with a vowel. In this case, je l'aime. In the plural, we would use les. So if you were referring to several novels, you'd say je les aime. Here's another example. La porte est ouverte. Je la ferme. The door is open. I'm closing it. La here refers to la porte, the door, which is feminine. Here's one in the masculine. Someone says, le document est sur la table. The document is on the table. You respond, je ne le trouve pas. I can't find it. Or, I don't find it. Le, before trouve, refers to le document. Lui and leur, on the other hand, are usually only for people, not things. Verbs that use lui and leur use the preposition a. The most common example is probably parler. For example, je parle souvent à ma sœur. I speak often with my sister. Becomes je lui parle souvent. Here, lui, which would be similar to the English with her, refers to ma sœur, which would be my sister. If you're talking about more than one person, you would use leur. I am talking to my brothers would be je parle à mes frères. With the pronoun, it would become je leur parle, meaning I am talking to them. In the common form, you put the pronoun after the verb with a hyphen. That applies to both forms of pronouns. So tell them the truth would be dis-leur la vérité. Another example in the common form is the door is open, close it. La porte est ouverte, ferme-la. Did you get it? Not so bad, right? If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the participe passé and how do you use it? The participe passé is a temps composé or a composite tense. That means it's made up of two parts, être, meaning to be, or avoir, meaning to have, followed by a verb in the past participle. In French, there are three main temps composés. Le passé composé, which describes the recent past, le plus que parfait, or past perfect, which is used to talk about an action that occurred before another action, and the plus perfect, passé antérieur, which is very formal and can mostly be found in literature or historical books. Let's focus on the passé composé, which is used to describe the recent past, and is the most commonly used out of the three. To use it, you need the present être or avoir plus the participe passé or past participle of the verb. For example, I have read a book would be j'ai lu un livre. The auxiliary verb, in this case, avoir, must be conjugated with the subject. Another example would be nous avons vu ce film le mois dernier, which means we have seen that movie last month. With être, you also need to conjugate it according to the subject, but it's a little more tricky than that. If the subject is feminine or plural, you need to add e, es, or s. For example, she has been to the swimming pool. Is, elle est allée à la piscine. If you're referring to a group of girls, it would be nous sommes allés à la piscine. But when do we need être or avoir? If a verb does not have any grammatical object, you have to use être. This is usually used for verbs describing movement. For example, aller, meaning to go, venir, to come, or partir, to leave. Avoir is used to describe an action and requires an object. For example, you would use avoir with the verbs manger, to eat, boire, to drink, or voir, to read, because you eat, drink, and read something. For example, j'ai lu un livre, I have read a book, or j'ai mangé de la glace, I have eaten ice cream. How was it? It's a bit tricky, isn't it? But with some practice, you'll definitely get better. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the main differences between written and spoken French? Written French and spoken French can seem completely different. A lot of grammar is relaxed in spoken French, so sometimes you might have trouble recognizing a phrase even if you already know it. For instance, abbreviations are extremely common in spoken French. It goes beyond dropping the E of je in front of vowels such as j'ai, which is I have, or l'année, which is the year. Among the most common spoken abbreviation is t'es for tu es, which means you are. So instead of tu es jolie for you're cute, you hear t'es jolie. Similarly, tu as, you have, is often shortened to ta. Another common omission is the ne in negative sentences. In writing, the correct way to say I have no money is je n'ai pas d'argent. In casual spoken French, you can just say j'ai pas d'argent. Here's another example. Ce n'est pas grave means no problem or it's not a big deal. Spoken, we usually say c'est pas grave. When people talk quickly, it can even sound like c'est pas grave, so you might not even hear the c'est. One more example is je ne peux pas, meaning I can't, can become je peux pas, but we can make it shorter and more casual by dropping the e, je peux pas. Some grammatical structures are more common in spoken French too. For instance, questions are usually shorter and more direct. Instead of saying the full qu'est-ce que tu as fait for what did you do, you probably hear t'as fait quoi, which literally translates to you did what? Another common spoken sentence structure is adding a pronoun at the beginning for emphasis. For example, if you want to emphasize your personal opinion, you could say moi je pense, literally that means me, I think. In English, it's something like as for me. Here's another example. If you're talking about your family's plans for the weekend, you can add nous for emphasis. Nous allons à la plage. Us, or us for us, we're going to the beach. There we go! I hope that clears things up. In another lesson, we'll go over le verlan, which is a form of French spoken slang. If you have other questions, please leave them in the comments and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the types of questions in French and how do I make them? There are three different question forms in French: colloquial, standard, and formal. The colloquial form is the simplest. You take a statement like "tu rentres chez toi" or "you're going back home" and simply raise your tone at the end of the sentence to make it a question. Tu rentres chez toi? You're going back home? Because it's colloquial, it's mostly used in casual conversational settings or between people who have a friendly relationship. If you saw it written, it might be part of a script or dialogue. The standard oral and written question form uses est-ce que. Putting est-ce que at the beginning of a sentence indicates that it's a question. For the previous example, you'd say est-ce que tu rentres chez toi? Are you going back home? You can use this standard question structure in any setting, formal or casual, written or spoken. A variation of est-ce que is qu'est-ce que, with an abbreviated que in front. It's basically the English what at the beginning of a sentence. For example, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire demain means what are we doing tomorrow? For other types of questions, you can replace que with pourquoi, quand, or où. For example, quand est-ce que tu viens? When are you coming? Pourquoi est-ce qu'il est triste? Why is he sad? Or, où est-ce qu'elle a étudié? Where did she study? Lastly, there's the formal question form. This is appropriate in very formal settings and in literary writing, but would be pretty weird in casual settings. In this form, you switch the verb and the pronoun around. In this register, you probably wouldn't be using tu. So in the previous example, are you going back home? It will be rentrez-vous chez vous with the polite vous address. Another example is que fait-il? For what does he do? Or avez-vous fini? Which is a polite way to ask have you finished? In the est-ce que form, you would say qu'est-ce qu'il fait? And est-ce que vous avez fini? The casual way to say what does he do would be il fait quoi? And for have you finished, it would be vous avez fini? But remember, est-ce que is acceptable in most formal situations, and the colloquial form is what you will be using in most casual situations. So you shouldn't need to use the formal question form much. Okay, that's it. I hope that clarifies some things. If you have other questions, please leave them in the comments and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.
Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what does si mean and how do you use it? Si has two main meanings. The first meaning is if, and the second one is yes, but only to negative questions. Let's go over if first. If you want to say, if you come to the party, Madeleine will come too. You use si. Si tu viens à la fête, Madeleine vient aussi. A common expression using si is si tu veux, meaning if you want. For example, si tu veux, on y va ensemble. If you want, we'll go there together. Note that if you use si with il or il plural, you abbreviate it to seal and seal to avoid repeating the same letter. So with il, the expression is s'il veut, je peux cuisiner. If he wants, I can cook. The other meaning of si is a little trickier, but I'm sure you'll get it in no time. You know questions that have negative phrasing like won't you be cold or aren't you coming? In English, if your answer is yes, you'd say something like yes, I'm coming or actually yes, I will be cold. In French, yes in response to a negative question is different from a yes to a positive question. Are you coming or tu viens, is a positive question. If you answer yes, you would answer oui. On the other hand, if someone asks you, aren't you coming? And your answer is still yes, then you will say si. Tu ne viens pas chez nous? Aren't you coming over to our place? Is a negative question, so you'd respond, si je viens, yes, I'm coming. In a way, si puts yes and no into one word. It's kind of like saying, no, what you just say is wrong, but yes, I'm agreeing. Here are a couple more examples. Il ne va pas nettoyer la cuisine? Isn't he going to clean the kitchen? And si, il va la nettoyer. Yes, he'll clean it. Or this one, tu n'es pas malade? Aren't you sick? And si, mais c'est un petit rhume. Yes, but it's a small cold. How was it? Did I help clear things up? If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how can I use French slang? There are a lot of words you hear in French that you'll almost never see written. In fact, there are many expressions that are unique to spoken French. Take quoi at the end of a sentence, for example. Quoi, in spoken French, doesn't just mean what. When used at the end of a sentence, it's a filler word that adds emphasis. If you're talking about something with your friend and she says, c'est normal quoi, she isn't asking a question. In English, it would sound something like, this is quite normal. She's emphasizing how average or usual the situation is. A very popular slang word among young people is genre. It can be translated to the filler word like in English. For example, c'était genre trop bien would be, it was like amazing. Another common word that's used differently in spoken slang is se casser, which means to go separate ways or to split up. Say you're at lunch with some friends and you have another appointment to go to. You might say, on se casse, to signal the end of the get-together. The closest equivalent would be, let's get out of here. However, be careful when you use it, because it can come off as a little rude. On a similar note, casse-toi means get lost, which can be mean or playful, so be careful with this one too. Let's look at some words you'll usually only use in conversation. Un boulot is literally a job. Boulot comes from the French verb boulotter, which means to work with secrecy. Its nuance is more of what I do to get by, rather than what I do for a living, which would be le travail. Un petit boulot, or sometimes just un boulot, is a part-time or odd job. Un bouquin is the casual word for a book. Bouquin comes from the Dutch boek, which also means book and has a similar pronunciation. France has a strong academic culture and informal discussions over books happen often. So many people use bouquin in more casual settings instead of livre, which is the formal way to say book. The word buffet means to scarf down food, when you're really hungry and not paying attention to your manners. It's not an insult though. Everyone understands the need to buffet sometimes, especially after a long, hard day of work. However, because of France's vibrant culinary culture, buffet isn't a word you'll come across in polite circles. Ouf is an interjection you'll hear often. It means you're relieved after you've done or gone through something crazy. You can use it as an adjective too, like c'est ouf when you're talking about a crazy situation. It most closely translates to that's sick or simply that's crazy. You can even describe a person as un ouf, which means someone who's lost his mind. Ouf actually comes from verlan, which is a pattern of slang in French. We'll talk about that more in another lesson. Here are a couple more common slang words. Kiffer means to dig something or to like something. Dingue means crazy, either in a good way or a bad way. Another one is chiant, a vulgar slang word which means really annoying. How was it? Go ahead and try them out. At your own risk, of course. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some examples of the slang le verlan? If you talk to a French friend about common slang words, they'll probably ask you if you've heard of verlan. Verlan is a variation of l'envers, which means the reverse. If you reverse the syllables of l'envers, you get verlan. L'envers, verlan, verlan. Verlan is kind of like Pig Latin, if you've ever heard of that. A key difference is that people rarely speak in Pig Latin, whereas French people use verlan all the time, but only certain words turn into verlan. For example, one of the most common French interjections, ouf, comes from verlan. It's actually fou reversed, fou, ouf. Fou is an adjective that means crazy or mad. Ouf means the same thing, except that you can use it on its own. Say someone asks you how your day was, and you've just had the craziest day. We've all had those. You might just respond, ouf. Pretty useful, right? Another common word in verlan is meuf, that comes from femme, which means woman. Meuf, though, is more casual. If a man says ma meuf, that means my woman or my girlfriend. If he says ma femme, that means my wife. Relou is another good one which comes from lourd or heavy. Relou is mostly used to describe a person who's a drag or someone that you don't want to be around. Some other verlan words pretty much keep their meaning. Charmé comes from méchant or mean, but in verlan it actually means awesome or amazing. Zarbi is bizarre or weird. Ripou is pourri or rotten. Chelou is louche or shady and weird. It can get a bit hard to follow, but it's pretty fun, right? To make things even more confusing, there's another variation of verlan. It's reverlan, a verlan word reversed again. This only happens to certain words though. Take flic, which is slang for policeman. Flic in verlan became keuf. However, keuf was a slang word originally only used by thugs. However, it became a usual slang term, so they changed keuf into fuck. So keuf went through reverlan and became fuck, which sounds like a certain word in English. I guess it reflects how some young people feel about les flics breaking up their parties. And that's it. In another lesson, we'll talk about curse words and their place in French culture. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, are the French really as snobby as they seem? This is a common stereotype, especially in the US, but it's actually more complex than it seems. A lot of Americans and other tourists think the French are stuck up because it seems like they refuse to make small talk, especially in a foreign language. Actually, silence is socially acceptable in French culture and some other European countries, especially among strangers. In American culture, it's common for strangers to make small talk, but in France, it's a little less common, especially in foreign languages. But why? One reason is that being educated is really important in French culture, and people are worried about making grammatical mistakes. Another reason is that many people remain close to a famous idiom, la vieille France, which means the old France. It is commonly used in conversation and is core part of the educational beliefs in France. French people are traditionally not used to talking to strangers and like to keep a distance. It's a part of the culture. Small talk can be seen as an intrusion into someone's private life. A final reason may be that French people are just really busy with their life and prefer listening to music or using their cell phones than talking to strangers. Although this may be the same in many other places, it is particularly prevalent in France. French people may also seem stuck up because of the social faux pas that foreigners make when they visit France. Here are some insider tips for French learners who may visit France in the future. Many tourists who visit France want to see famous sites. However, some may have not done research or really taken in the significance of these historical places. When a French person sees tourists traveling in big groups who stop at a site for 10 minutes, take a few pictures, and then leave, they feel as if the tourists are not really appreciating the culture. Our advice is to do some research on the places you want to visit before you go. That way, you can show your respect not only to French people, but to their culture as well. Here's another thing to be careful of if you have been studying French. Garçon was a famous expression used to call waiters in French. It literally means boy, which is actually quite rude. In the US, there is still the impression that French speakers use the word garçon. If you use this word, the waiter might be really offended and not give you great customer service. Nowadays, French speakers simply get the attention of the staff with excusez-moi, excuse me, or simply s'il vous plaît, meaning please. So please, use that instead when you are at the restaurant in France. So just because the French don't talk as much as foreigners expect them to, that doesn't mean they're rude or stuck up. That's it for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is le monde francophone? In a nutshell, le monde francophone is the French world, or all the parts of the world where French or some form of French is spoken. That's everything from other French-speaking countries in Europe, like Switzerland, Belgium and Luxembourg, to French West Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, the French Caribbean, parts of Northern South America, as well as Quebec and some other provinces in Canada. The main reason why French is so widely spoken across the globe is because of colonial history. Between the 17th and early 20th centuries, France and other European countries established colonies around the world. That doesn't mean that French sounds the same everywhere. Every place has its own dialects. For example, Haitian Creole is a language that's derived from French, but mixed with other languages. In West Africa, French pronunciation has a local accent. West African vocabulary, rhythms and tonalities have merged with European French and Français populaire africain, or FPA, but the sound of French is different in every French African country. There are also plenty of expressions normally used in other Francophone countries that don't exist in France. For example, ça fait 2 jours, which literally means it's been 2 days, but in Burkina Faso normally means it's been a long time since I've seen you. Just like language is deeply intertwined with culture though, Le Monde francophone also goes a lot deeper than just a shared language. A lot of travel and cultural exchanges happen among Le Monde francophone. A fun fact is that in an international competition like the World Cup, countries in Le Monde francophone typically root for each other, as long as they're not playing against each other. It's a different kind of camaraderie that's really only found in Le Monde francophone. That's it for now. Did I answer your question? If you have more questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some French business expressions? Many French business expressions can also be used in casual settings, so it's good to know these standard phrases so you can communicate in both types of situations. In this lesson, we will go over some basic business expressions that you can use in French. Je m'excuse du retard, which means I am sorry for being late. It's a very useful phrase. You can use this for whatever reason. You can manage to be on time for a meeting or just come in late to the office. You can also say désolé pour le retard, which means the same thing, but it's a little more casual. If you're asked to write a report and want to know when it's due, you can ask quand dois-je rendre le rapport, which literally means when should I give the report. If you're a little busy at work and want to let your coworkers know, you can use this phrase, je suis en train d'organiser un rendez-vous. Être en train de means to be in the middle of something. So the example, je suis en train d'organiser un rendez-vous, means I'm in the middle of organizing a meeting. Se rendre compte is another great idiom to use in business. It literally means realize or be aware. Let's go over how to use it. For example, if your team has a lot of work to do, but you will be out of town the next week, you can say rendez-vous compte que je suis en vacances la semaine prochaine, which means take into consideration that I'm on vacation next week. If your boss needs something urgently and you have just finished your work, you can use the phrase venir de, which literally means to come from. It's also an expression that means just now. If you want to say, I just finished my project, you can say, je viens de finir mon projet. When everything is finished, you can use the phrase, c'est un plaisir de collaborer avec vous, which means it's a pleasure doing business with you. You can also use travailler, which means work, instead of collaborer. With travailler, the phrase would be c'est un plaisir de travailler avec vous, which means it's a pleasure working with you. And that's it. I hope these phrases can come in handy for you. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, when I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is la laïcité? La laïcité, in short, is the separation of state and religion. Another word for it is le sécularisme, or secularism. Every country has its own principles of secularism. In France, it's part of a long historic battle against religious influence on laws and government. The French secular state, or l'état laïque, doesn't promote any one religion or discourage any, as long as the beliefs and practices don't interfere with the state or with other citizens' rights. Because of its commitment to total separation of religion and state, though, it means that overt religious activities and symbols are banned in public spheres. That includes public schools, public service offices, and public areas. This distinguishes it from other models of church-state separation, such as in the United States. In the US, the Constitution prohibits religious tests for government offices and the passage of laws that prevent people from exercising religion freely. The US Constitution, however, does not prohibit people, including members of government, from expressing religious sentiment in the public sphere. French laïcité, however, makes a sharp distinction between public and private spheres and attempts to keep religious expression out of the public one. One area where this has caused controversy in recent years is the case of Muslim headscarves. These have been banned in some public contexts, such as schools, though some in the Muslim community consider it obligatory. Critics say that rather than promoting diversity, freedom of thought and opinion, or multiculturalism, la laïcité is interfering with the right to basic religious self-expression. Some go further to argue that laïcité unfairly infringes upon the rights of those who practice minority religions. Public holidays, for example, continue to enshrine traditional Catholic values in public life by following the religion's liturgical calendar. Critics of laïcité come from this traditional Christian perspective as well, arguing that the prohibition of religious sentiment from public life served to deny the positive contribution faith has made to the history and culture of France. So different populations of France are still at odds on what laïcité is all about and whether the current laws are fair or not. That's it for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you use I, and what are some common expressions? I is a pronoun that you can use to replace a noun. It makes your sentence shorter and easier to say or read. I usually replaces a location. However, there are a few different ways to use it. For places, I means there. Let's break it down with this sentence. J'ai mis mes clés sur la table, mais elles n'y sont plus. That means, I put my keys on the table, but they're not there anymore. That's easier than saying, I put my keys on the table, but they're not on the table anymore. In this case, the I in elles n'y sont plus refers to sur la table. You can also use I for geographical locations. Say someone asks, Est-ce que tu vas à Paris cet été? Meaning, are you going to Paris this summer? You can respond with either, Oui, j'y vais en août. Yes, I'm going there in August. Or non, je n'y vais pas. Je vais à Londres. No, I'm not going there. I'm going to London. In the English translations, I becomes the word there, replacing Paris. We also use I with certain verbs that use the preposition it. For example, let's take penser à, which means to think about. For the verb to think in English, you'd normally use the pronoun it. This is to refer to something you mentioned previously, like I think about it. In French, we use I. So, I think about it is je vais y penser or je vais y réfléchir. And that's it. In another lesson, we'll talk more about verbs that use a versus verbs that use de. If you have more questions, please leave them in the comments and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when and how do you use en? En is a pronoun that you use to replace a noun. This is to make your sentences shorter and easier to say. It's used in 3 ways. First, en can be used as a pronoun in place of uncountable nouns or indefinite plural nouns. Let's dive into some examples so you can learn how to use en correctly. Let's look at this short conversation. One person says, Tu achètes des pommes? Meaning, are you buying apples? The other responds, Oui, j'en achète 1 kilo. Meaning, yes, I'm buying 1 kilogram of them. Here, en refers to des pommes, or apples. It's simpler than saying, Oui, j'achète 1 kilo de pommes. Yes, I'm buying 1 kilogram of apples. We also use en for uncountable nouns like water, de l'eau, or milk, du lait. For example, if someone asks you, Tu veux de l'eau? Meaning, do you want some water? You can reply, Oui, j'en veux bien, merci. Meaning, yes, I would like some, thank you. The second use of en is as a pronoun for verbs that use the preposition de. For example, avoir envie de, meaning to feel like. Conseiller de, to advise, and se servir de, to make us off. So, if a friend asks you, Tu veux aller voir un film? Do you want to go see a film? But you're not really in the mood. You can respond, Je n'en ai pas envie. I don't feel like it. The third way you can use en is as a preposition to describe something. For example, une veste en cuir is a leather jacket. Literally, this is une veste, a jacket, en cuir, in leather. Here, en is used to describe what the noun, in this case, jacket, is made of. Another example would be if you ask a shop clerk at a clothing store the question, Est-ce que vous avez cette veste en bleu? Which means, do you have this jacket in blue? In this example, en is used to describe the color of the jacket. That's it for now. I hope that makes more sense now. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what does donc mean? Donc is tricky for a lot of French learners, especially English speakers, because it's a pronoun that doesn't exist in English. It's used to link 2 sentences together without repeating the noun. There's no single translation and has a few different uses. Here are the 2 main ones. First, donc replaces any person or thing after a verb plus de construction. For example, avoir besoin de, to need, or se rappeler de, to remember. Let's look at some examples so you can learn how to use donc correctly. Say you had a strange dream, but you can't seem to remember what it was about. In 2 sentences, you could say J'ai fait un rêve bizarre, meaning I had a weird dream. And Je ne me rappelle pas du rêve, meaning I don't remember the dream. Here you say rêve, meaning dream, twice. Using donc, you can combine those sentences into one. J'ai fait un rêve bizarre dont je ne me rappelle pas. I had a weird dream that I don't remember. Other verbs that use dont this way include s'occuper de, meaning to look after, se servir de, meaning to make use of, and parler de, to speak of, as well as any être plus adjectif plus de construction, like être content de, to be pleased with. With parler de, meaning to talk about. An example would be la dame dont je parle porte une jupe rouge, meaning the lady I'm talking about is wearing a red skirt. Here's another example with être content de, to be happy about. It's voilà le livre dont elle est contente, meaning here's the book that she's pleased with. The other way we use dont translates to whose. For example, let's take these two sentences. First, je te présente Robert, meaning this is Robert. Le frère de Robert peint ma maison. Robert's brother paints my house. Using dont, you can shorten this to je te présente Robert dont le frère peint ma maison. This is Robert's, whose brother paints my house. Here's another example. J'ai vu mon ami means I met my friend. La femme de mon ami va bientôt avoir un bébé means my friend's wife is having a baby soon. So together, it would be j'ai vu mon ami dont la femme va bientôt avoir un bébé, which means I met my friend whose wife is having a baby soon. And that's it. I hope I helped clear things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.
Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when do you use verb plus a or verb plus de for verbs that can use either? Depending on the context, some French verbs can use either a or de. The most common ones are probably penser, meaning to think, parler, to talk, and jouer, to play. While each of these verbs can use both constructions, the nuances are different, and we will go over that in this lesson. Both penser à and penser de mean to think about, but penser à gives the impression of having something in mind. An example would be à quoi tu penses, which means what are you thinking about, or what do you have in mind. Penser de is usually for soliciting opinions. For example, qu'est-ce que tu penses de ce film is what do you think about this movie. For parler, to talk, parler à is used to express to whom you're talking. So, I'm talking to my aunt. Would be, je parle à ma tante. Parler de is for what you're talking about. If you said, je parle de ma tante, in English it would be, I'm talking about my aunt. So, parler de is for topics and parler à is for people. The same rule applies to demander, meaning to ask, and promettre, to promise. Demander à is to ask someone something, and demander de is to ask someone to do something. Promettre à is to promise someone something, and promettre de is to promise to do something. For jouer, to play, it's very simple to understand. Jouer à is for sports, and jouer de is for musical instruments. So you would say, je joue du piano, I play piano. But je joue au tennis, I play tennis. Remember, a plus le makes o. Those are the major differences you'll come across. There are some verbs like continuer, to continue, and commencer, to start, that mean the same thing whether you use a or de. I hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what's the difference between j'adore ça and je l'adore? Both sentences mean I love it. How do you know which one to use? In j'adore ça, Ça refers to a general or abstract thing. The L apostrophe in je l'adore refers to something specific. Let's go through some examples so you can learn how to use j'adore ça and je l'adore correctly. Say your friend wants to offer you some chocolate. They ask you, tu aimes le chocolat? Meaning, do you like chocolate? You might respond, j'adore ça, I love it. Let's continue the conversation. Your friend gives you the chocolate and you take a bite. Then, your friend might ask, tu aimes ce chocolat? Meaning, do you like this chocolate? In this case, you'd answer, je l'adore. Again, I love it. Here, you're talking about the specific chocolate you were given, not the chocolate in general. Following this rule, if you're talking about food, industries, or general activities, you use ça. Things like les fruits, fruits, les maths, mathematics, or la campagne, the countryside. For those, it's j'adore ça. On the other hand, ce cours de maths, this math class, or ta maison, your house, or ce film, this film, are specific things, so you use je l'adore. You can use je l'adore for people too. You could say, Hélène, je l'adore, elle est trop sympa, which means, I love Hélène, she's so kind. One good tip is to be careful when using adorer with your significant other. In this context, it means something closer to I worship him or her. In this case, you should say je l'aime instead. Okay, that's it. I hope I answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the different ways you can make a negative sentence in French? Unlike English, negative sentences in French have two parts. The most basic negative sentences use ne and pas and put the verb in between them. For example, I'm going is je vais. So, I'm not going is je ne vais pas. You can make more complex negative sentences by using ne with different negative words. Let's go over some examples so you can learn how to make negative sentences in French correctly. Plus on its own usually means more, but together with ne, the phrase becomes no more. For example, je n'y vais plus means I'm not going anymore. There are also negative words in French that can be used on their own or with ne. For example, let's look at this short conversation. Your friend asks you, tu fais du ski en hiver? Do you go skiing in the winter? You can respond, non, je n'y vais jamais. No, I never go. Here, the word jamais, meaning never, is used with ne. Without ne, your response would be non, jamais. No, never. Another negative word, rien, which means nothing, can be used by itself or with ne, like in this example. Your friend asks, qu'est-ce que tu fais aujourd'hui? Meaning, what are you doing today? If you respond with ne, your answer would be, je ne fais rien aujourd'hui. I'm not doing anything today. Without ne, it will be just rien, nothing. One of the most common combinations is ne, pas encore. Encore means again, but in je n'y vais pas encore, it becomes I'm not going yet. You can also use pas encore on its own to say not yet. For example, tu es prête? Are you ready? Pas encore, not yet. Another good expression is pas du tout. That means not at all. For example, someone asks you, es-tu sorti hier soir? Did you go out last night? You can respond, non, pas du tout. No, not at all. Remember, French only uses two negative particles in a sentence. If you use three, the sentence becomes something like the double negative in English. For example, if you said je ne vais pas jamais, meaning I don't never go, then that means you do go sometimes. but it sounds unnatural. Okay, I hope that makes more sense now. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some popular French idioms? In English, we have our fair share of idioms like it's raining cats and dogs, or even what's up? They might not make much sense literally, but they are commonly used in everyday conversation. French, of course, has them too, and here are some examples. Faire la tête means to sulk, but its literal translation is actually to do the head. It's used when someone isn't happy about something and in a bad mood. For example, elle a fait la tête toute la journée. She sulked all day. We also have coup de foudre, which literally means a strike of lightning. But as an idiom, it means love at first sight. Pretty fitting, actually. Ça marche is one you'll come across every day. Marcher means to walk, but ça marche means that works. English speakers might recognize this following one. Il fait un temps de chien, literally, it's a dog weather. It means, as you might have guessed, it's terrible weather. Here's a funny one. Arriver comme un cheveu sur la soupe. It literally means to arrive like a hair in the soup. This is about entering a situation at the worst possible moment. It can also mean arriving suddenly, by chance. Another idiom that uses food is mettre son grain de sel, literally, to put one's grain of salt. It's an idiom that means to give an unnecessary opinion. Donner sa langue au chat literally means to give one's tongue to the cat, but it actually means to give up. For example, if someone asks you to guess something and you have no idea what the answer is. Another one that doesn't make much sense, but you'll often hear is faire la grasse matinée, which literally means to do a fat morning, but people use it to say they slept in. Ça coûte les yeux de la tête, which means it's ridiculously expensive, but literally means it costs the eyes out of the head. There you go! Try them out! If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you know when to use le passé composé or l'imparfait? There are two commonly used past tenses in French. Le passé composé, the past perfect, and l'imparfait, the imperfect. Le passé composé is made up of an auxiliary verb, either être, meaning to be, or avoir, to have, plus the main verb in the participe passé or past participle form. L'imparfait just uses the main verb in the imperfect form. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use le passé composé and l'imparfait correctly. When telling a story in the past, le passé composé is used for the sequence of events. These are specific events that happened at a certain time, like j'ai mangé une pomme, meaning I ate an apple. L'imparfait is used for describing context or circumstances that happened within that time frame. For example, je mangeais une pomme. I was eating an apple. You'll often use l'imparfait and le passé composé together in the same sentence. L'imparfait illustrates the context, and le passé composé is the disruption of an action. For example, this sentence uses both. Je mangeais une pomme quand Loïc a appelé, meaning I was eating an apple when Loïc called. Je mangeais une pomme sets the scene. I was eating an apple. Quand means when, that's the interruption. The interruption is a time-specific event, so we use le passé composé. Loïc a appelé, meaning Loïc called. That's it for this lesson. I hope I helped clear things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you use adjectives as nouns? In French, we can omit the noun and use the adjective as the noun. Does that sound confusing? Let's do some examples. Let's say you're at a furniture store and you want to buy a chair. If you're looking at a bunch of different colored chairs, we can use la chaise bleue to refer to the blue chair. However, in this case, we've already mentioned the chairs and their colors. So we can just say la bleue, which means the blue one. By using an article with an adjective, you can make it a noun. In this case, we used la because la chaise, the chair, is feminine. Then we added the feminine adjective bleu to make la bleue, to stand for the blue chair. Likewise, if you're discussing different colored hats, you'll use the masculine noun chapeau. That means we have to change la to the masculine article le and change bleu to match. Then, if you would like to buy the blue hat, you would say le bleu s'il vous plaît, the blue one please. Superlatives can also become nouns in French. Apart from the direct translation of the best, which is le meilleur or la meilleure, you can use any adjective plus an article plus either plus for most or moins for least to make a superlative sentence. Plus on its own means more, but with an article it means most. Take le plus grand, for example. Grand means big. So, le plus grand means the big one in general. But if you said le plus grand, that means the biggest one. Similarly to plus, moins means less on its own, but least with an article. La moins vite, for example, literally means the least fast one, or more naturally, the slowest. It's important to note that because we use la in this sentence, we know that we're talking about a feminine noun. If we were talking about a masculine noun, the sentence will be le moins vite and mean the same thing. And that's it. Was I able to answer your question? If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, for units of time, like jour and an, when are they masculine and where are they feminine? You've probably seen both masculine and feminine forms of day, jour and journée, and year, an and année. So how do you know which gender to use? Well, the general rule is that the masculine forms are for counting and the feminine forms are for emphasizing the duration of an action. Let's go through some examples so you can learn how to use the masculine and feminine forms for units of time correctly. Let's start with years. J'ai passé 10 ans aux États-Unis. I spent 10 years in the US. In this sentence, we are simply counting the number of years, so we use the masculine an for years. Let's do another example. If we say, j'ai passé 10 merveilleuses années aux États-Unis, meaning, I have spent 10 wonderful years in the US. We're using the adjective wonderful and putting emphasis on the duration of time spent. Therefore, we use année, years, in the feminine form. Let's practice some more with days. J'ai 2 jours de repos. I have 2 days off. Again here, we're simply counting the number of days off. So, we use jour, the masculine form of day. If we say, j'ai 2 journées de repos, also meaning I have 2 days off. Then we're emphasizing the time off, implying that we have time to do a lot of things. There are some cases when it doesn't matter which gender you use. That's when you're talking about last year or next year. Both l'an dernier and l'année dernière work for last year, and the same with next year, using prochain for masculine or prochaine for feminine. Okay, I hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is ça and how do you use it? Ça is a pronoun and the informal word for cela, which means it or that. Let's practice some expressions so you can learn how to use ça correctly. The expression ça te dit literally means, does it say something to you? It's used to ask, does that sound good to you? For example, ça te dit d'aller voir un film? Does going to see a film sound good to you? In response, you can say, ça ne me dit pas vraiment, which means, I don't really feel like doing that. If it does sound good, then you say something like, oui, or bien sûr, yes, or of course, respectively. On the other hand, ça me dit quelque chose. Literally, this says something to me, usually means that rings a bell. The opposite will be ça ne me dit rien, literally meaning this doesn't say anything to me, or that doesn't ring a bell. Another common expression is ça alors. It means something like how about that? And it can be used in both positive and negative ways. For example, a friend tells you he's moving to Senegal. You might respond, ça alors, c'est super. How about that? That's awesome. Here's another scenario. Your friend tells you he has tons of work to do. Then you see him at the beach. You can say, ça alors, how about that? With a negative connotation. You might also hear c'est ça, that means that's it, in the sense of you got it or I got it, depending on who you're talking about. Ça y est also means that's it, though it's more along the lines of finally, as in ça y est, j'ai fini. That's it, finally, I'm done. You can also add ça before c'est to add emphasis. For example, c'est beau means it's beautiful. But if someone says ça c'est beau, then they really, really mean it. And that's it for this lesson. I hope I answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you say I'm excited to do something? By now, you are probably starting to speak French pretty well. But sometimes, when you don't know a word, you take an English word and Frenchify it. Now, usually, this is a really good idea, and it shows that you have a good understanding of the language. But there are times when this will not work. Saying you're excited for something is a great example of why you should be careful. Let's say you're wandering around Paris, and you become completely lost. You need directions, so you go up to someone on the street and say, I am lost, je suis perdu. This is perfectly correct. You've taken the past participle of the verb and used it as an adjective. Now imagine you and that person become friends and he or she invites you to a party. You think in your head, I am excited, and you Frenchify it saying, je suis excité. Well, excité is definitely an example of a time where you should not Frenchify a word. It means to turn on. So if you say, je suis excité, or ça m'excite, you are telling the person you are horny. This could definitely be embarrassing for you. Using excité is a common mistake for English speakers. If you want to say you're excited for something, use avoir hâte de. This literally means to have haste to. A better translation would be I can't wait. Another way to express that you can't wait for something is être impatient à l'idée de faire quelque chose, meaning literally to be impatient at the idea of doing something, but avoir hâte is still more commonly used. So, instead of saying je suis excité de te revoir, or it turns me on to see you again, say j'ai hâte de te revoir, meaning I look forward to seeing you again. Or, if you're excited to see the city of Nice, say j'ai hâte de visiter Nice. Maybe you have a French pen pal and you are finally going to meet him or her in person. Say j'ai hâte de faire votre connaissance. I can't wait to meet you. Now remember, don't be discouraged or embarrassed. Keep playing around with French. Sometimes you won't know a word, so give it your best guess. And even if you make a mistake like this one, French people will probably find it funny. And that's it for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I form the future tenses, and when should I use them? There are two future tenses in French, the futur proche and futur simple. Proche means near. When we use futur proche, we're talking about the near future, things that will happen soon. Conjugation is easy. We use the present tense of aller, to go, and then add the infinitive. So the verb nager, to swim, becomes je vais nager, meaning I'm going to swim. Tu vas nager, meaning you're going to swim. Il va nager, meaning he's going to swim. And so on. To make the future simple, we add the stem plus the ending. The verb stem for et and ir verbs is just the infinitive. So the verb stem for nager is nager. The verb stem for finir, to finish, is finir. For re verbs, we drop the i. So vendre becomes vendre. The endings are very similar to the present conjugation of avoir. They're always the same est, a, on, et, on. However, there are irregular stems which you will have to memorize. We go through the most important ones now, saying the verb, its stem, a sample conjugation, and its translation. Aller, ir, j'irai, I will go. Être, ser, tu seras, you will be. Avoir, aur, il aura, we will have. Pouvoir, pour, nous pourrons, we will be able to. Vouloir, voudre, vous voudrez, you will want to. Venir, viendre, elles viendront, they will come. Savoir, saur, je saurai, I will know. Faire, faire, tu feras, you will do or make. Envoyer, envers, elle enverra, she will send. Okay, so which one should you use? You'll use the futur proche for the near future and futur simple for things that are further in the future. If you are going to go swimming right after this lesson, use futur proche. Je vais nager. If you will swim in the ocean on your vacation in Barcelona, use futur simple. Je nagerai dans la mer. Futur simple is also used in some forms, like if statements. But we will cover those in later lessons, so don't worry about it now. If you use mostly futur proche when speaking, you'll be just fine. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, What is l'Académie française? L'Académie française, or the French Academy, is the foremost authority on the French language. They are the ones that decide the standards and rules or norms of the French language. The people who make up the Academy are known as immortals or immortels. There are famous writers, academics, and politicians who are elected for life. The Academy was founded in 1635. During the 17th century, France had a thriving salon culture. A salon is a gathering where people interact for amusement and also to spread knowledge through conversation. Here, men and women of different classes could discuss art, politics, and language on equal footing. This salon culture helped establish France as the center of culture. It also made French the language of refinement and reason in Europe. The Academy began as a salon, but Cardinal de Richelieu, chief minister of Louis XIII, took it under his wing. He was determined to create a powerful French state centered around the king. He turned the Academy into a public institution and charged it with making clear rules for the French language. But what is the purpose of the Academy? Its main goal is to produce the French dictionary. However, it took a long time to finish. The first dictionary published by the Academy took 54 years to complete. Today, the Academy still meets and creates dictionaries. Its rules are not always followed, even by members of the government, but it still has a powerful influence on French culture. The French language is one of the main things that binds French people together. Many people see the French language as France's greatest achievement. In the 20th century, Albert Camus famously said, "Ma patrie, c'est la langue française. My homeland is the French language." That said, French people were not always united in language. Instead of one language, there were many regional languages. In 1794, at least 6 million people out of 28 million French citizens couldn't speak French at all. During the French Revolution, for the first time, the government needed the consent of the people. The French language became one way to unify citizens. Some revolutionaries in Paris were extremely suspicious of regional dialects and identities. These days, regional dialects are not as common, but they still exist. Corsican, Breton, Gallo, Basque, Franco-Provençal, Occitan, and Catalan have official status in their regions. And that's it. I hope I answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.
Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some English words that French speakers often use? There are a lot of English words that are used in spoken French, and a lot of words of foreign origin in general. However, because they are not considered proper French, they are all treated as slang. L'Académie française, or the French Academy, regularly comes up with French words to replace these foreign words, but they don't always catch on. Let's take a look at some examples. This one must be the most popular, the word OK. If you want to speak proper French, say d'accord, or its shortened form, dac. But you will hear French people say OK all the time. Here are some more examples. You can probably guess their meanings. Un weekend, un meeting, faire du jogging, faire du shopping, and stress. Clothes are commonly referred to using English words as well. For example, un pull is a pullover. Un sweat, un t-shirt, les jeans. Here's a fun fact. The English word denim actually comes from French, since denim originally came from the French city Nîmes. They were de Nîmes or from Nîmes. Technology-related words are often from English as well. For example, le Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi, cliquer or to click, blog, podcasting. The list goes on. Not that foreign words are always masculine. So a lot of times you can use an English word with a French accent and it will mean the same thing. But there are other times that they can mean a bit different. Let's go through some examples. Un mail is an email, not a letter or postmail. Top actually means best. Here's one that's a bit tricky. An interview. If someone is being interviewed by the press, then it's un interview. If you are going to a job interview, then it's un entretien. Here are also some non-English loan words which comes from Arabic. Un bled means a small town. Le Casbah means house. And kiffer is a verb meaning to like or love. And that's it for now. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some good words to connect and contrast sentences or thoughts? This is a very important subject. Using connecting words will help you express more complex ideas. It will bring your French to the next level and you'll sound much more fluent. Here are some useful words to get you started. If you want to add more to what you've said, use these phrases. En plus, meaning in addition to. En outre, meaning moreover. Du coup, meaning so that means. Note that du coup is very informal and should only be used in conversation. If you want to show a causal relationship, you might use puisque, meaning since or because. For example, puisque c'est l'été, je mange une glace. This means, since it's summer, I eat ice cream. If you want to contradict a sentence, you might use malgré, meaning despite. An example is, je me suis endormi malgré le bruit, meaning I fell asleep despite the noise. Cependant and néanmoins both mean however. Quant à means as for example, quant à lui, il n'a pas pu dormir. This means, as for him, he couldn't sleep. Sinon means otherwise. An example is, faites la vaisselle, sinon les abeilles vont revenir, meaning, wash the dishes, otherwise the bees will come back. Alors que and tandis que both mean whereas or while, and bien que means even though. This needs to be followed by the subjunctive. Okay, that's it. Try using these words in your conversations. They will really help take your French to the next level. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use si, tellement, and tant? We might translate all of these words as so or so much. They all intensify words. So instead of something being just good, it's so good. Or instead of someone just working, someone can work so much. However, we can't use them interchangeably. So let's take a look at each one. First, si. You might remember that si can be used to respond negatively to a negative question. But si can also be used to emphasize an adjective or adverb. For example, il est si gentil, meaning he's so nice. Here, si modifies the adjective gentil. Now, let's use it with an adverb. Elle court si vite. This means she runs so fast. You can also use tellement in either of these sentences. Il est tellement gentil, meaning he is so nice. And elle court tellement vite, meaning she runs so fast. Okay, so when should you use tellement and not si or vice versa? First, you should use si and not tellement when making comparisons. So you could say, elle ne court pas si vite que toi, meaning she does not run as fast as you. But you cannot say, elle ne court pas tellement vite que toi. That would be incorrect. Also, tellement is not as formal as si. Here's when you shouldn't use si, but tellement instead. Tellement can be used to mean so much or so many. It can modify nouns, whereas si cannot. So you could say, cet été, j'ai lu tellement de livres, meaning this summer I read so many books. Notice how we added de. Additionally, tellement can be an adverb all by itself. For example, j'aime tellement cette pièce. I like that play so much. You couldn't say j'aime si cette pièce because there is no adverb to modify. Alright, now let's talk about tant. Like tellement, tant means so much or so many. It's used to emphasize quantity. For example, tu peux t'en rire, meaning you can laugh so much. Or maybe you want to say there are so many people. That will be il y a tant de monde. Again, notice that de is also used when tant is before a noun. Tant is probably more common than tellement. So as a rule of thumb, use tant to talk about quantity, tellement as an adverb, and see if you want to make a comparison or to intensify an adverb or adjective. Before we end this lesson, here are two expressions with tant that French people use all the time. The first is tant pis, meaning too bad, and tant mieux means all the better. And that's it. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use lequel, auquel, and duquel? Now, as you might remember for a previous lesson, we use que, qui, and dont to combine two sentences. We can also use lequel, auquel, and duquel to also combine sentences. Let's have a look at when we should use them. Lequel can mean which. We can use it to ask a question when the object is known. For example, quel livre veut-il? Meaning, what book does he want? Can become lequel veut-il? Meaning, which one does he want? Passe-moi l'assiette means pass me the plate. Laquelle means which one? Notice anything different? Unlike which in English, lequel has to agree with the gender and noun. So we also have lequel, laquelle, lesquels, and lesquels. Le, la, and les are the definite articles. And you add l, e to the end to make it feminine and s to make it plural. Lequel, laquelle, lesquels, and lesquels. If we can also use lequel to combine a sentence with a preposition, then why can't we just use que or qui? Well, because of the preposition. In spoken English, we often end sentences with a preposition. For example, it's the tool I repaired the wall with. But you want to avoid this in French. If you would translate the previous sentence directly, it will be c'est l'outil que j'ai réparé le mur avec. This is understandable, but not correct. C'est l'outil avec lequel j'ai réparé le mur. Or, it's the tool with which I repaired the wall. sounds much better. Let's look at some more examples. First, le cahier dans lequel j'écris means the notebook in which I write. L'entreprise pour laquelle elle travaille means the company for which she works. Finally, les photos dans lesquelles Bigfoot figure sont floues means the images in which Bigfoot appears are blurry. What if the preposition is a or de? In these cases, you can't use lequel. You have to use auquel or duquel. It sounds more natural, and auquel and duquel must agree in gender and number as well. Auquel, à laquelle, auquel, auquel. Duquel, de laquelle, desquels, desquels. An example is les livres auxquels je fais référence, meaning the books to which I am referring. Le magasin près duquel je travaille, meaning the store near which I work. Lastly, let's talk about how we use duquel in this case and not dont. This is because it's a prepositional phrase. So remember, for phrases like près de, à côté de, and en face de, use duquel, not dont. Okay, I hope I helped clear things up for you. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when do you pronounce the S in plus? You might think you should never pronounce the S in plus unless it's before a vowel. But French is an irregular language, and plus is no exception. Whether you pronounce the S in plus and whether you don't also depends on what you mean. So when do you pronounce the S? When you want to say there is more of something. For example, j'ai plus d'amis que toi means I have more friends than you. And when don't we pronounce the S? When we are using plus in a negative sense. So if you want to say no longer, we say ne plus. For example, nous ne sommes plus amis, meaning we are no longer friends. So when you have more of something, add an S. When you are missing something, lose the S. This is helpful because French speakers often drop ne in negative constructions. So if someone says j'ai plus d'animaux, you will know they mean they have more animals. If they say j'ai plus d'animaux, you know that they no longer have any animals. That's it. Easy, right? Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use ne que and when should I use seulement to mean only? In English, we only have one word for only, but in French, we have two. They mean the same thing, but they are used in different ways. In general, I would say that ne que is more commonly used, but both are fine if you use them correctly. Let's take a look. Seulement is easier for English speakers because it's very similar to the English word only. We can use it before a number, il y a combien d'assiettes? Seulement deux. There are how many plates? Only two. Or we can use it in a sentence. Je fais seulement du sport pour m'amuser. I do only sports for fun. But where you put seulement changes the meaning of the sentence. This sentence means the only activity you do when you want to have fun is sports. But what if you want to say the only reason you play sports is to have fun? Then you say, je fais du sport seulement pour m'amuser, meaning I do sports only for fun. It's a subtle difference, but it's important. Now, ne que can be used almost interchangeably in these sentences, but ne que is not an adverb, but a construction. You put ne before the verb and que before the thing you want to modify with only. Let's use the same sentence, I do only sports for fun, which is je ne fais que du sport pour m'amuser. Here, que comes right before du sport. Now, let's say I do sports only for fun. This will be je ne fais du sport que pour m'amuser. Que comes before pour m'amuser to mean only for fun. In spoken French, people often drop ne in negative constructions, and ne que is no different. So you might hear someone say, il reste que 3 jours, meaning there are only 3 days left. Or maybe even, il y a combien d'assiettes? Que 2. This means there are how many plates? Only 2. And that's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use the subjunctive? Le subjunctive can be difficult for English speakers, since English doesn't really have a subjunctive mood. Luckily, conjugating the subjunctive is pretty easy. The endings are always the same, but there are some irregular stems. We'll go over some of the irregular stems in this lesson, so you can get used to them. So when do we use the subjunctive? We use the subjunctive after expressions like craindre de, to fear, aimer que, to like, détester que, to hate, souhaiter que, to wish, douter que, to doubt, sembler que, to seem, and falloir que, to have to or must. What do these expressions have in common? They express fear, a wish, command, and uncertainty. Things like this are what we have subjective feelings about. Okay, let's look at some examples. Je suis content que tu sois content, meaning I'm happy that you're happy, is a feeling, and je veux qu'il le fasse, meaning I want him to do it, expresses a will or desire. There are a few things to note here. 1. We need 2 subjects for the subjunctive. One person wanting, wishing, fearing, or demanding another person to do something. Second, take a look at this sentence. Elle ne pense pas que je parle français. This is where subjunctive can get tricky. She doesn't think that I can speak French, meaning she doubts that I can. If she thinks I can, then there is no attitude of doubt. In this case, we don't use the subjunctive. So, ne pas penser que, to not think, uses the subjunctive, whereas penser que, to think, doesn't. Do people use the subjunctive in spoken French? This is a tough question. In written French, you must use the subjunctive when necessary, but in spoken French, it's not so common. However, if you want to speak proper, elegant French, then definitely use the subjunctive. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I make if statements in French? If statements are a great example of conditional sentences. This means that one part of the sentence is conditional to the other part. It can only happen if the other one does. There are 3 ways of making an if statement, and they vary in how likely or unlikely something is to happen. First, let's talk about the most likely. To make this statement, we use the present tense or the present perfect with the future tense. If I see him, I will say hello. Si je le vois, je lui dirai bonjour. It's not certain that you will see him, but if you do, it's certain that you will say bonjour. Next, let's talk about something that is unlikely. Here, you should use the imperfect and the conditional. This form describes what would happen if the first part comes true. At the moment, it's not true, but it could be. For example, si on pratiquait, on serait intouchable. Meaning, if we practiced, we would be unstoppable. You probably remember the imperfect. You use it to describe things you used to do in the past. The conditional tense might be new to you. To form the conditional, use the same stem as the futur simple and add the imparfait endings. Easy, right? Finally, let's talk about things that are impossible. This uses the conditional perfect. This form is purely hypothetical. You're saying if things had gone differently in the past, then things would be this way. For example, si j'avais écouté ma mère, je n'aurais pas été dans ce pétrin. This means if I had listened to my mother, I wouldn't have been in this mess. Let's have more examples. For a situation where something would really happen if the condition is fulfilled. Si tu écoutes encore ce podcast, ton français s'améliorera. Meaning, if you listen to this podcast again, your French will improve. For a situation where the condition is yet to be fulfilled. Si tu pratiquais chaque jour, ton français serait quasiment parfait. This means if you practiced every day, your French would be almost perfect. Lastly, for a condition that is impossible to alter. Si tu étais né en France, tu aurais déjà parlé couramment français. This means if you were born in France, you would already speak French fluently. Okay, well, that's all for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you compare nouns, verbs, and adjectives? With each of these expressions, you will have to change them slightly depending on whether you are comparing nouns, verbs, or adjectives. First, let's talk about plus que, meaning more than. Remember to pronounce the S because we are talking about a greater quantity. If you are talking about nouns, add de. For example, j'ai plus d'amis que toi, meaning I have more friends than you. Notice that the de doesn't become des even though ami is plural. If de agrees with the verb, the meaning changes to ne plus, meaning no longer. For example, on n'est plus amis, meaning we are no longer friends. In spoken French, people often drop the ne in negative contractions. So remember, if you want to talk about quantity, you have to use de. For adjectives and adverbs, we put the adjective or adverb between plus and que. For example, il est plus grand que moi. This means he is taller than me. Il court plus vite que moi, meaning he runs faster than me. Simple, right? Lastly, for verbs, we put plus que after the verb. For example, il parle plus que moi, meaning he talks more than me. Now, moins que, meaning less than, follows the same pattern. For example, j'ai moins d'amis que toi, meaning I have fewer friends than you. Do not make de agree with the noun. For adjectives and adverbs, an example is il est moins grand que moi, meaning he is shorter than me, or il court moins vite que moi, meaning he runs slower than me. For verbs, an example is Il parle moins que moi, meaning he talks less than I do. Aussi que, meaning as much as, is slightly different. It follows the same pattern for adjectives and adverbs. For example, il est aussi grand que moi means he is as tall as I am. Il court aussi vite que moi means he runs as fast as me. But for verbs and nouns, you should actually use autant que. The placement of autant que is exactly the same, it's just a different word. So let's take a look. J'ai autant d'amis que toi means I have as many friends as you do. Notice that de doesn't change. And now for verbs. The example is il parle autant que moi, meaning he speaks as much as I do. So to sum up, pronounce the S in plus. Never make de agree with your noun. And use autant que instead of aussi que when you're talking about nouns and verbs. And that's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you say something looks like, resemble, smells like, or tastes like? First, let's go through the useful verbs. Ressembler means to resemble. An example is, il ressemble à un acteur que je connais, meaning he looks like an actor I know. Another verb is se ressembler, meaning to look alike. Elles viennent d'autres coins du monde, mais elles se ressemblent quand même. Means they come from different sides of the earth, but they resemble each other anyway. Avoir l'air de means to seem like or to look like. An example is ce repas a l'air bon, meaning this meal looks good. Another example is cette fille a l'air un peu nerveuse, meaning this girl looks a little nervous. The verb sentir means to smell like, to taste like, or to feel like. Sentir has a lot of definitions. So let's go over this in more detail. Overall, you can think of sentir as meaning to have the feeling of. Sentir, se sentir, et ressentir can be used to talk about emotional feelings and thoughts. But with sentir, the feeling can also be taste, smell, or touch. You can tell what it means by context, but it's usually used to mean to smell like. If someone walks into the room, covers their nose, and says, ça sent les chaussettes, you know that they mean, it smells like socks. If someone is eating a soup and says, ça sent les champignons, this means it has the taste of mushrooms. If someone says this, they probably mean there is just the hint of mushrooms in the soup. The last verb is avoir le goût de, to taste like. An example with this is, ça a le goût de quoi exactement? This means, what does it taste like exactly? Be careful not to mix up avoir le goût de and goûter, because goûter means to literally taste something and you can't use it to say something tastes like. The subject has to be a person. So, un potage ne peut pas goûter d'ail means a soup cannot taste the garlic. And it doesn't make any sense. The correct sentence would look like this. Je voudrais goûter le vin d'Alsace. I would like to try Alsatian wine. Goûter is a great verb for sharing and for trying new food, which you definitely want to do in France. Here are more examples. Tu veux le goûter? Meaning, do you want to try it? Or, goûter le pain, il est frais. Meaning, try the bread, it's fresh. And that's it for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.